Hey, how's it going? Great to see you. Today I'm having a look at a set of filters that I've found for DaVinci Resolve. It's called Dehancer Pro, and basically what this is it's a set of effects that provide old film kind of look, film stock kind of look. Now, if you're like me, you don't want to just off the cuff add noise or grain or horrible effects to really nice quality modern footage, but sometimes you do want to degrade it a bit, either for a particular effect or a particular emotive effect, and this is where this particular plugin for DaVinci Resolve really makes a bit of a difference, is that it's not just overbearing looking for a filmic look. It's actually applying some of the characteristics of old film stock look to give you a particular effect, to be able to control it and get a particular emotive response. I'll show you what I mean by cutting in here and having a look at this set of filters in progress and actually in Resolve, and just play around with a few of them, and then you can go and use the link that I've got down below to get I think it's a 30-day free trial, but you'll be able to click on that and go check it out. Anyway, let's cut in here and have a look at it and see what we've got. Now, this is a bit of a sequence that I shot for a short film some years ago. The short film itself, it was pretty good. I kind of liked it, but it wasn't quite what I wanted. Though we got some really good shots out of it, and I just wanted to use a couple of these now just to show off these filters, because I thought it was pretty good cinematic type footage. But anyway, so we basically used a lot of ambient light and stuff like that in here, and I just wanted to grab a couple of bits of that now to show you what we can do with this application. Okay, so let's just go for a nice frame. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this effect. Now, when you install it, it goes under Open Effects, and if you scroll down you can find a section called Film Emulation, and here's Dehancer Pro. I'm just going to drag that across and drop it onto the clip that I'm working with just here. I'm also going to drag it across and put it onto this clip, because I think I might work with that one as well. Now, straight away you can see that it did a little bit of fiddling on here, so what I want to do now is head to the Effects tab under the Inspector, and here you can see I've got Dehancer Pro, and straight away you can see there's a whole heap of different sections in here. There's a lot you can do with this thing, and I'm just going to start by collapsing them all just to make it easy for us to isolate them and have a look at each one in turn, and also just sort of see what is in here. There's quite a lot. First section of all, so as you can see there's a whole heap of things here. By the way, if they make changes to this plugin, they're going to ship the alterations and additions for free over time as well if you buy it. Anyway, there's this whole pile of sections in here. I'm just going to start at the top and work my way down. The first one is input, and this lets you sort of define what sort of film stock you're coming from, what your digital camera is. So the basic one is the Rec 709, which is your general video stuff. You can use Rec 2020 and this one here that I'm not particularly familiar with, or you can choose a camera. If you choose a camera, then you've got a selection of different camera brands here. So let's say Blackmagic Design, and if I choose that, then I can choose the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. It's got a profile for that in here, and the film grading, which is the format you might choose on the Pocket 09. I'm not going to use that at the moment because the camera I shot this with was an older one, and it was just shooting Rec 709 footage, so I'm going to leave that. But you can also see that it has a couple of other options here for defringing. That's where you get little aberrations around the edges of high contrast bits of footage, and also how much it applies. So that's the input setting. So that just sort of sets your footage up so that you got something of pretty good quality, and it knows what sort of data it's working with. The next section I'll look at is this film section. Now, this is where you can tell the footage to emulate a particular type of film stock, and as you can see, there's quite a few here that you can choose through. It's got that Kodak 250D by Vision 3 film stock by default. You might not know what a lot of these are, you probably recognize some of the names in here, but as you can see, if I choose different film stocks down here, it gives you different color effects and everything like that, and this is to sort of emulate what particular types of physical film stock over the years would actually give you as a filmmaker if you were shooting on film. They're fairly extreme, some of them, and if you find one you like and it's a bit too much, you can actually tone it in or tone it out and sort of adjust how much of an effect that gives you, and compare it to your original 709 footage if you're using the 709 footage. So there's something that you can have a bit of a play with as well. The next section is the expand section. Now this is obviously helping you expand your dynamic range, and now if I was to bring up the video scopes, which you can choose from down here, that's going to give me a few different things here where I can see the different color profiles, and in particular the one I want to look at is the waveform, which shows me where all the light in this image is. I'll just reduce that down a wee bit so that it's not covering up too much of the footage. Now what I can do here with the expand is to just adjust where the black point is. You can see that if we use this waveform here, actually what I'll do is I'll just cut in so we're just looking at the waveform. There we go, and you can see the blacks are fairly heavy on that, so I want to make sure that the black point here isn't too far down and not too far up, so I don't want to bring it too high, but I want to make sure that the blackest blacks are just touching the bottom, and the white point here you can control as well and bring that up and just sort of generally lighten up the footage and recover some texture in the background if you want to. And once again, you want to make sure that doesn't blow out over the top. So this is a useful tool that you can use to just sort of once again set the tone of the whole image before you get too far into other effects. I will just I'll leave that one where it is actually. The next one I'm going to come down to is looking at print. Now I think this is more to do with the film print process, so the whole exposing the film and everything, and you can sort of emulate whether a film stock might be underexposed or overexposed a little bit during the processing of the film, the physical processing of physical film sort of thing. And you can change tonal control and color density and all that sort of thing, the type of stuff that you would do with the chemistry when you're actually exposing the film. Saturation in here, I don't know how relevant that is for film exposure, but not actually having physically exposed film myself, but as you can see, all of these things let you make some fairly cool tight tweaks to the print process, emulating the prints process. There's a analog range delimiter in here as well, which I think just stops you from getting too far from one extreme to another in there. I haven't played with that a lot, so yeah, that'll be fun to play with anyway and see what it can do later. The color head here. Now this is one that lets you sort of re-expose the footage a little bit and change the color weighting. So if you, for example, want to balance that out, and if we come to histogram here, as you can see, here's your red, green, blue parade, and if I wanted to take move these sorts of things around and create a bigger emphasis on one color palette area over another, this is somewhere where you can play with that sort of thing, and it's sort of playing with it in the same way that you would with process color and the pigment on the film. So I figured where that sort of thing is happening. This is for preserving the exposure, which you might want to do on particular things. Once again, you just have a look at it, and it lets you make sure that you're not blowing out the color anywhere. And once you do that, you can actually dial this back and say I only want 50% of the effect you've got above. So this one here, the impact thing, is on most of these, and it lets you provide an overarching idea of how much of the effect you want to actually apply to the footage. So you can also enable and disable it and just have a look at the impact of what it is that you've done. The next one down is film grain. Now we start getting into the sorts of things that are a little bit more destructive, I guess, destructive or constructive depending on your point of view. You can adjust the size of grain, how much the effect the grain is having. So if I want to increase grain size here and ramp it up a little bit, and let's just get a little bit extreme in here as well, so you can actually see the grain coming through. If you were doing some sort of special effects footage, you might want to go that. If you just wanted to not have your footage look too clean and modern, you might just want to use a little tiny touch of this on your footage, just to soften something off without losing contrast edges or something like that, and just make it feel a little bit more homely, I guess. I'm trying not to use the word filmic, but as you can see in here, you can get all the chroma distortions and things like that you can get with a physical film grain as well, and whether it has more or less impact on midtone shadows or highlights. Of course, normally the midtones are where you're going to see the grain more, but if you wanted to really grain up the shadows, you could do that. And say you don't want to grain the midtones, this gives you a lot more control, because if you want a little bit of noise in the background to make a shot feel softer behind and more dynamic in the darker and highlight areas, or just in the dark areas, but not mess up the midtones so much, you can do that in here. And as you can see, it has that kind of effect as well. The next one down is an interesting one called Halation. Now what this basically is creating a halo around things, and it's not enabled by default. And if I turn that on, maybe if I come to the candle here, you'll see the halation effect having a bit more of an impact. If I bring it up on the flame, for example, and turn that on, then hopefully it'll start sort of creating a bit of a halo around the flame. So Halation basically is talking about a halo, and there you can see that halo really come out around the high contrast area where there's a bright light. So you can create that sort of effect in here. I'm just going to play that a little bit so you can kind of see how it works. This is a slowed down sequence for some reason. I've not intentionally done that, it's just from the bit of footage I got. So you can see that halo effect has appeared there compared to not having the halo effect. So yeah, so that's what halation is. It's all about creating a halo around light sources, really. And if you've got somebody's face which is in a high contrast thing, or you've got a backlight on someone's head, you can actually create a bit of a halo effect around that as well, which is quite interesting, and it's a fun thing to play with. You can also see on some bright points down here where it's done it, and I think if you have a look over on the edge of the paper where you've got a bit of contrast along there as well, it just masks that up and just brings up those bits of light there as well. And also down here on the candle, the other candle down the side. So that's the halation effect. I'll just leave that off for now, and we'll come and have a look at the next one, which is a bloom effect. Now a bloom is a similar sort of thing, and if I turn that one there on, you can see that it just increases the brightness and lightness of the candle there as well. And if I do that, you can see that it's just creating a glow and that sort of thing around the candlelight as well. If I bring the diffusion up, and it gives it that soft kind of looking through, like perhaps a lens surface or a filter has created a bit of a flare without being really gone nut bar on the flare like some directors like to do. And as you can see, it just sort of gives that candlelight, and I've gone really extreme and overboard on there to make it really obvious. And you can have a look at what that's sort of done to that candlelight, and how it really has created a bloom around it. Obviously you're going to want to tone that back a little bit if you're really going to use it, so that it just sort of intensifies and softens the light, so it doesn't look like it can be a bigger light without being so harsh, I guess is the way of saying it. Just sort of put some frosting on it, and it makes it feel a little bit warmer and Christmassy, I guess you could. Now these days the vignette is something that we're all pretty familiar with and kind of like using in footage. I know I do anyway, particularly in photography. What I'm going to do is just enable that now. At the moment by default there's a really subtle vignette in there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the feather all the way off that and turn the exposure all the way up so you can see where the vignette shape in here is. So I'm overexposing outside the vignette and underexposing inside it. I'll actually move that down the other way. This is the more traditional way of having a vignette, is the shape is more exposed than the border. So what I'm going to do there, when I can see that harsh edge, is I'm just going to increase the size a little bit. I'm going to change the aspect ratio of it, and you can go that either way. You can make it quite tall if you want to, and make it quite narrow and wider if you want to do it that way. I kind of like that. Then bring that up, and if you wanted to sort of highlight the whole middle of the image like this, then you can do that, and then feather it back out again so that you get that softer effect. And as you can see with the vignette, it just darkens the corners and it brings the focus of the image into the lighter parts of the image. You could create quite a different effect by sorry, I'll leave that enabled. You could create quite a different effect by I'll just take the feathering all the way off there, and I'll change the aspect ratio to a tall aspect and bring the size down a wee bit, and I could just concentrate very tightly on the head of the guy here. You can use the center tool here to change where it is, and I think that's 0.1 either way, so if I go negative 0.2, that should move it back to about there. That's fine. I'm glad I remembered that one properly. And then I could feather that one off as well, and then what you see is that most of the image is quite dark except exactly where he is, so your viewer is going to be more focused in on that. You can also animate that, as you can see by the way a lot of these have got keyframes in here, so you can animate where they are and move them around with the footage as well, and some sort of manual tracking, if not automated tracking somewhere. Film breath. Now this is an interesting one because it's something that works over time. So if I just bring the head back to earlier in that clip and then play that, what it is that the footage is moving around and it breathes in and out. So if you can imagine the breathing being sort of what the camera is doing and moving around. So it had to do with physical cameras and the way that film used to be quite inconsistent the way it moved through it. So what I'm going to do is increase the period. I'm going to change the exposure, and once again this is because the exposure can ride up and down depending on the film stock, and if it might not be perfectly centered or the shutter might be moving back and forwards a little bit. Back in the days when cameras were really all over the place. It's got tonal and contrast breathing and color breathing as well, and the impact of that I'm just going to leave at 100%. So now I've got those all ramped up, and I'm just going to play that back so you can see what it does in here. So you can see the color tone changes a little bit over time. It's going warmer and cooler. The exposure is slowly going up and down a bit as well, and the colors moving. So if I decrease the cycle time on that, the period, which is in frames, and play that again, you might see it a little bit more extremely. So you can see it sort of phasing, and it is breathing in and out of color tone, so it goes in and out, in and out, in and out. And that's what breathing refers to in film, and it's when film exposure was not a perfect science, and as they kept the film through chemistry, it would change as it went through the bath, because things were often exposed manually by hand, and so one bit might be in for 2 seconds, the next bit of film might be in for 2.5, and that sort of thing, and you would get that change in aberration of film stock. So that's what this is emulating, the film breathing, and I think it's quite cool. It's a neat little thing to have in there. Once again, you can do something like that, make it fairly extreme, and then ramp back that impact, and and use a quite a subtle thing, and it would just make something feel a little bit more real. You could do outdoor lights and you wanted to emulate traffic or foot traffic moving outside a building, or you just want to age something for special effect or something like that. You can do all sorts of stuff, and there's a lot of give and take in it. The next one here is the gate weave. Now, gate weave is basically it's talking about the gate on the front of a film camera again, and maybe with in the old days where the construction of them was not solid, and they moved around a wee bit. So I'm just going to turn that on for a little bit. You've got period once again. I want it to move fairly quickly so that we can see the effect. You got translation, which is how much the film is moving in the gate, left and up and down, left and right. So you've got the X and Y axis there, and sometimes the gate could rotate a little bit as well. Once again, you're talking about some really old cameras here, so I'm just going to increase that and the rotation a little bit and leave the impact on there, so you can have a look along here and see how that is. I'll turn enabled off first, just so that you can watch the footage as it is natively. So it is handheld, so there's a bit of movement in here anyway, but that's camera movement rather than gate movement. So the gate is the bit at the front of an old film camera, for those that you don't know, where the frame that's being shot is held. So the frame moves in, it clamps down, the shutter opens, and then next frame goes through, doing that 30 times a second or 15 times a second or whatever the camera's running at. Now if I enable that again and you have a look at that, then you can see that there's that bit of shake going on in there. There's some translation and moving around, and it's basically just emulating an old school engineering of the machine. So let's just ramp that translation up. You notice as I ramp the translation up, by the way, that and the rotation, that it zooms in a little bit, and that's what the auto zoom is for. So let's just have a look at that again and run that, and you can see it's jiggling around quite a bit more. So that's not the whole camera moving, it's just the film in the gate moving, and this would be a very badly worn out camera at that degree. So that's what that one does. The next one down here is false color. I'm not a person that's played with false color a lot, so I'll just put that in there and I'll let it go. Basically it's an analysis tool that you can use to see what the effect of everything else you're doing is. Okay, I admit I need to go and learn more about false color. It's something that I've got on a lot of my gear, but I don't particularly use it a lot, and I probably should more. But it's there, and you can play with it. It helps you figure out where you've got bad contrast and stuff or something like that, or particular lighting or things are overblown. So that's something you might want to have a look at and learn about, and it's something I might want to learn about as well, but I'll turn it off for now. The output section here is basically sort of being able to take everything you've worked up out here and just sort of say, do I want to make the whole lot a wee bit more subtle or more intense, so you can come and adjust it and just give an overall toning and say, well, I've done a lot in there, each bit looked okay, let's pull it all the way back and all the way up again, and then just have a look at how much I really want to have in there on the final output. So that's basically an overriding impact filter of everything that you've done before. And finally there's a LUT generator, which will let you output what you've done as a LUT. Once again, I've just got this, I haven't really had a play with that one, but it's something I certainly want to do and have a play with. So there you go. Anyway, there's Dehancer Pro from Dehancer.com. If you click on the link down below, you can go get a trial version of this one and have a play with it yourself. If you buy it, that's fantastic. You're going to have a great lot of fun. I've gone and got this, and I'm really looking forward to playing with it a lot more and using it to make my films a lot better and a lot more dynamic, and find different ways that I can get better emotive response from my viewers by using these tools. Hope this has been interesting and useful to you. If it has, don't forget to click down here and subscribe, and also watch this film here and this film here, because they're really going to help you out as well. YouTube picked them just for you because they know what you like, and I will see you in another video shortly.